Imagine you own a bakery, like the absolute best in town.
Oh, definitely. The one with the line out the door for sourdough every single morning?
Exactly, yeah. You've spent a decade building this incredible reputation, and then one day you decide to move your bakery across town to a newer, bigger building.
Makes sense. Expanding the business.
Right. But you don't put up a sign at the old place. You don't forward your mail. You don't even tell your regular customers. You just lock the doors, quietly open up across town, and expect everyone to just magically sniff out where the flour went.
Yeah, they won't. I mean, they'll show up at 7 in the morning, stare at a dark storefront, assume you went out of business,
Yeah.
and just walk down the street to your competitor.
Total commercial suicide. In the physical world, the rules of moving are just obvious. But for some reason, when businesses do this digitally, when they change their website's domain name for a massive corporate rebrand or a pivot, there is this dangerous assumption that the internet is just going to effortlessly figure it out.
Right, that it just happens automatically.
Yeah. Welcome to the deep dive. Whether you are a tech-curious learner trying to understand the hidden plumbing of the web, or you are a professional currently staring down the barrel of a terrifying website rebrand, you are in the right place. The stakes today are incredibly high.
They really are. And to visually represent those stakes, I've actually shifted my background today to this massive glowing blueprint of digital infrastructure.
Well, it's very intense.
Well, because a website isn't just a brochure, it is a complex architectural system. Changing a domain name is not a cosmetic update. It's one of the most consequential, foundational technical events a business can ever endure.
Absolutely. And we are pulling our insights today from a singular, highly detailed source. It's called The Master Guide to Domain Migration and SEO Preservation, published in 2026 by the South African agency New Perspective Design.
It is a phenomenal breakdown of the process.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack their exact blueprint for moving a website to a new domain without vaporizing years of hard-earned search authority. Okay, let's unpack this. Why is moving a website so much riskier than our bakery analogy?
Well,
I mean, it's just code, right? If Google is essentially a giant digital phone book, shouldn't they just easily update their records the second I register the new name?
yeah, that assumption right there is what the source material calls the grand illusion of the seamless move. We tend to think of Google as a static directory where you just cross out the old address and write in the new one.
Right, like updating your contacts app.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Google is fundamentally a reputation engine. Over the years, it has built up deep institutional knowledge about your specific domain.
So it's not just tracking that I exist, it's actively measuring how much it trusts me.
Exactly.
But how does a machine algorithm actually measure and store that trust? Like, what does that look like?
It does it through a massive, interconnected web of signals called the link graph, combined with historical user behavior. So every time a reputable site links to your domain, that's a vote of confidence.
Oh, okay, so it's essentially tracking digital word of mouth.
Exactly. And Google also tracks the specific search queries your pages successfully answer, how long users stay on your site, and the topical authority of your content. When you buy a brand new domain, it has zero history. It is a ghost.
Wow, a ghost. So it really has nothing to go on.
Right? You're asking Google's algorithm to completely transfer a decade of accumulated highly specific trust over to a totally blank slate. And the uncomfortable reality is that Google never does this perfectly on day one.
Which means there is an inevitable drop. I know the guide is very explicit about this. You cannot magically prevent disruption, right?
We really cannot. There will always be ranking volatility. There is always a risk of traffic loss. The entire objective of a migration strategy is about damage control and engineering a rapid recovery.
So if you're listening to this and mentally preparing for a migration, think of it like moving to a new city. You can go to the post office and formally forward your mail, which is great for logistics.
It gets the letters there.
Right. But the post office doesn't forward your reputation to your new neighbors. You still have to prove to the locals that you're trustworthy, even if your old friends are still writing you letters.
That captures the vulnerability perfectly. And because that transfer of trust is so incredibly delicate, the pre-migration prep work is where the battle is actually won or lost.
Because you cannot pack the moving truck if you don't know what's in your house.
Precisely. The source lays out a foundational playbook, starting with a complete URL inventory. And they really emphasize the word complete.
Right, and when they say complete, they don't just mean your shiny top-tier service pages or your homepage.
Oh, no. They mean every single URL on the current domain. You have to scrape the entire architecture. And then following that, you must execute a comprehensive backlink audit.
Okay, a backlink audit. Break that down for us.
So you need to identify precisely which pages on your old site carry the most inbound link equity, meaning which specific pages have the most valuable external websites pointing to them.
I can definitely see the trap here. Let's say I wrote a blog post 5 years ago that went viral, and the New York Times linked to it.
That's the holy grail of links, yeah.
Right. If I don't inventory that specific page and I just casually delete it during the rebrand because it's old, I'm essentially throwing away pure digital gold. That New York Times authority just evaporates into the ether.
It vanishes. Poof, gone. Which leads to the most grueling but vital phase of preparation, creating a meticulous one-to-one URL mapping strategy.
1-to-1, so matching everything perfectly.
Exactly. Every single valuable old URL must be matched to its exact, contextually relevant equivalent on the new domain.
Oh man, if you are an enterprise business listening to this and you have like 10,000 pages, I know this sounds like a terrifying spreadsheet nightmare.
It is a lot of spreadsheets, yes.
But let's assume the boxes are packed perfectly. The spreadsheet is flawless. Knowing what we have doesn't actually get the traffic to the new house. How do we ensure Google's crawler bots don't just show up to an empty lot?
Well, this moves us from the logistics to the execution, specifically what the guide calls the 301 mandate. We have to implement redirects at the server level.
Okay, let's pause there. Let's break down the mechanism of a redirect for anyone listening who doesn't speak fluent server administration.
Fair enough. At its core, a redirect is a server header response. When a browser or a search engine tries to load your old URL, your server intercepts that request and fires back a status code.
So it's basically the digital version of a bouncer redirecting traffic.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So a 302 status code tells Google, hey, we moved, but it's only temporary, so keep the old address in your index.
Which is definitely not what we want for a rebrand.
Exactly. A 301 status code, on the other hand, tells Google, this move is permanent. Please pass all historical link equity and ranking signals to this new destination. The 301 is absolutely non-negotiable for a migration.
Okay, I want to challenge this setup, though, because looking at that strict one-to-one mapping requirement, it feels incredibly rigid.
It is rigid, very rigid.
Say I'm completely overhauling my business model during this rebrand. Half of my old product pages are totally obsolete. From a user experience standpoint, isn't it significantly cleaner to take all those old, defunct URLs and just set up a catch-all 301 redirect straight to my beautiful new homepage?
Oh boy. That instinct is incredibly common, and the source material treats it as a 5-alarm fire.
Really? A 5-alarm fire?
Yes, redirecting everything to the homepage is the single most destructive technical mistake a business can make during a migration.
Wait, seriously? So the lazy catch-all homepage redirect actually trains Google to devalue your entire library? You're basically hitting the delete button on your own relevance.
You are. Let's look at the actual mechanism of why that happens. Google's algorithm evaluates relevance on a page-by-page level.
Okay, making sense so far.
If your old URL was a deeply researched 2,000-word article about, let's say, repairing vintage blue suede shoes, it earned trust for that highly specific topic.
Right. It's the authority on blue suede shoes.
Yes. So if you 301 redirect that specific URL to a generic homepage that just says, welcome to our shoe store, Google's crawler experiences a massive semantic disconnect.
Ah, I see. The bot was looking for a repair guide and just got a welcome mat.
Exactly. The algorithm categorizes this as a soft 404. It decides the redirect is manipulative or just unhelpful, strips away all the historical equity of the old page, and drops the ranking to 0.
Wow, so the specificity is the value. You have to give the bot the logical continuation of the topic.
You have to.
And the guide also warns about the physical path these bots have to travel, right? They specifically mention the danger of redirect chains.
Yeah, think of a redirect chain like taking a flight with 3 layovers. URL A redirects to URL B, which then redirects to URL C.
If I'm a Google bot trying to index 1 billion pages a day, I'm going to really hate that layover.
Oh, they despise it.
Okay.
The bots literally have a crawl budget, a finite amount of time, and server resources they will spend on your site. Each hop in a redirect chain adds server latency. It bleeds load time.
So they just run out of patience.
Right. If the chain is too long, the bot simply gives up and leaves before ever reaching your new content. You need direct, nonstop flights. The old URL must point directly to the final new URL in a single step.
That makes perfect sense. No layovers.
None. Furthermore, you have to hand the bot a map, Update your XML sitemaps, which are essentially the literal architectural blueprints you submit directly to Google so they don't have to guess where the new rooms are.
Okay, so the architecture is sound. We have our nonstop 301 flights, our updated blueprints, and zero lazy homepage dumps. We've executed the textbook migration.
A flawless technical setup, yes.
But here is where it gets really interesting and honestly, a bit terrifying.
Yeah.
The guide introduces a massive paradigm shift here. What if flawlessly following all of these best practice rules is the exact thing that destroys your new website?
This is exactly where we pivot from standard IT protocol to high-level strategic warfare.
I want to read a direct quote from the text because it fundamentally changes how you view a domain. Quote, migrating a penalized domain via 301 redirects is not a fresh start, it's moving the problem. You're carrying the penalty signal to a domain that hasn't earned it yet.
It's a brilliant point. The entire standard playbook we just discussed relies on one massive, silent assumption. And that assumption is that your old domain is actually in good standing with Google's algorithms.
It's like declaring bankruptcy, but trying to open a brand new credit card using your exact same social security number. The 301 redirect acts like that SSN. It explicitly tells the bank, or in this case Google, that the new domain inherits the exact same entity profile.
Exactly, including the terrible credit score.
Yeah, including all the bad debt.
That is the precise mechanism. When you set up a 301 redirect, you aren't just passing authority, you're passing association. If your old domain has severe trust issues and you perfectly redirect it to a pristine new domain, Google recognizes the successor.
So the new site is basically doomed from day one.
Yes. The new site is born with a suppressed ability to rank. It inherits the sins of the father, so to speak.
Okay, so if I have a terrible algorithmic credit score, how do I find out before I infect my new site? The guide breaks this down into diagnosing the rot, starting with scenario A, which is the manual action.
Right, the formal penalty.
If I'm staring at a manual penalty, surely I just rip the Band-Aid off, migrate the site quickly, and hope the new URL tricks the human reviewers into leaving me alone.
Attempting to outrun a manual action is a guaranteed failure. A manual action is a formal, human-issued slap on the wrist from Google's web spam team.
So it's not just a bot. Actual humans are looking at your site.
Yes, you will actually see a bright red alert in your Google Search Console dashboard. It usually means you've been caught blatantly violating guidelines, buying toxic backlinks from link farms or skinning up thousands of pages of purely plagiarized thin content.
Ah, okay. So you have to address the root cause first before you even think about moving.
You really have two choices. You either pause the migration, do the agonizing work of disavowing the toxic links, delete all the spam, and submit a formal reconsideration request to Google until the penalty is officially revoked.
And only then do you move.
Only then. Or, if the domain is so polluted it's just beyond saving, you must make a complete clean break. You launch the new domain with absolutely zero redirects from the old one. You intentionally let the old site die so the new one can live.
That requires serious nerve, just burning it all down. But scenario B, algorithmic suppression, sounds significantly more insidious because there is no red alert dashboard to warn you.
Algorithmic suppression is the frog in boiling water. There is no notification at all. Your organic traffic just begins a sudden, sustained downward trajectory that happens to perfectly align with a known Google core algorithm update.
Okay, so if I'm a business owner and my traffic tanked 6 months ago and I think, hey, this brand is cursed, let's just change our domain name to get a fresh start, how does the algorithm actually track me across the move?
It comes down to domain-wide quality ratios. Google's machine learning doesn't just evaluate isolated pages anymore. It calculates the proportion of quality across your whole entity.
So it's looking at the big picture.
Right. If 80% of your old website was unhelpful, low-effort filler content created just to capture search traffic, your entire domain gets categorized as a low-quality entity.
Ouch.
If you blindly 301 redirect everything to the new domain, you instantly transfer that exact 80% toxic ratio. The suppression travels right through the server headers.
But the guide offers a strategy here, right? By selectively redirecting only the top 20%, like the genuinely helpful, high-quality pages, you force Google's bots to calculate a brand new, highly concentrated quality score for the new site. You leave the garbage behind to manipulate the ratio in your favor.
Precisely. Which brings up a brilliant framework question posed by the source. This raises an important question. Would you actually want Google to know that your new domain is the successor to the old one?
That is a heavy strategic question. Because if the answer is no, A poisoned inheritance is mathematically worse than starting from absolute zero.
It absolutely is.
But surviving Google's algorithm doesn't mean anything if the actual business breaks down in the process, which makes me wonder about the infrastructure outside of search. I mean, we're talking about real companies here.
Right. Technical SEO happens to real businesses losing real money. The guide stresses that decision makers must financially model the inevitable volatility.
So they need to prepare for the dip.
Yes. If you are the CFO, you cannot wait until 3 weeks after the launch to panic because inbound leads have dried up.
You have to know what a 40% traffic drop translates to in lost revenue. If your cost per acquisition relies entirely on organic search, your recovery budget for technical fixes or supplementary marketing has to be locked in before the drop occurs, not scrambling for cash after.
Exactly. Preparation's everything.
But here's the operational detail from the text that gave me a massive aha moment, completely unrelated to search rankings: email addresses.
Oh yes, the digital plumbing of human communication.
Explain the mechanism here, because it's so easy to miss when you're hyper-focused on Google bots. If I change my website from oldbakery.com to newbakery.com, my website files move. But why does the billing department's email suddenly stop working?
Because your email routing, your MX records, are tied directly to your domain name's DNS settings, not your web hosting.
Ah, okay. There are two separate systems.
Completely separate. When you flip the name servers to launch the new domain, if you haven't meticulously mapped out the email transition, the old addresses instantly detach.
That sounds like a disaster.
It is. Client contracts get lost in the void, invoices bounce back as undeliverable, and customer support just goes completely dark. It creates immediate, massive operational chaos.
And it bleeds into paid advertising as well, right?
Oh, massively. If you are running Google Ads or Meta campaigns and you fail to update the destination URLs the second the new site goes live, you're literally paying money to send users into a redirect chain.
Which we know bots hate. I assume ad platforms hate it too.
Paid platforms despise latency. Sending a paid click through a redirect hop drastically lowers your ad quality score, which immediately increases your cost per click. You're burning budget for a worse user experience.
Not to mention the human trust element. Redirects handle the bot traffic, but human communication maintains the relationship.
Right, the actual customers.
If I've bookmarked a service I really trust, and one day I click it, and I'm suddenly redirected to a completely unfamiliar URL with a weird new corporate name, my instinct isn't, oh, they executed a brand consolidation. My instinct is, I've been hacked, this is a phishing scam, and I instantly close the window. Surprising your users destroys trust.
It really does. Transparency before the technical switch is just as critical as the 301 redirect stirring it.
Okay, let's say the preparation was flawless. The switch is officially flipped. The MX records are updated so the emails work. The customers were warned. But the screen is dark. How do we actually read the tea leaves? How do we know if we are succeeding or failing in those critical weeks post-launch?
The guide maps out a very clear timeline for this. Weeks 1 to 2 are pure triage. You are glued to Google Search Console looking for 404 crawl errors, basically identifying any dead ends where the bots are getting stuck.
You're just putting out fires.
Exactly. Then, weeks 2 to 4 is when the wild ranking swings begin to stabilize. The algorithm is processing the new architecture.
But if I'm staring at my analytics in week 3 and my organic traffic is down 30%, how do I know if I'm just experiencing standard volatility or an actual catastrophic failure?
That is the million-dollar question. Volatility stabilizes and begins to show upward momentum. Failure is a sustained downward trajectory that simply doesn't reverse. But to spot the difference early, you have to understand how Google tests new URLs.
Okay, what's the tell?
In your data, you must look at impressions before you look at clicks.
Interesting. Why do impressions lead clicks?
Because an impression means Google chose to display your new URL in the search results, even if it's buried on page 2 or 3. The algorithm is actively testing the new domain. It places it in the results, measures user interaction, and recalculates.
So it's basically Google dipping its toe in the water.
Exactly. If your impressions are recovering, it proves Google is indexing your pages and trusts them enough to serve them. As the algorithm builds confidence, those URLs move up to page 1 and the clicks will naturally follow.
But if your returning user rate completely tanks, that points to a failure in brand continuity. The humans are lost. And I really love the local context the guide provides here. Since New Perspective Design is a South African agency, they emphasize that migrations do not happen in a generic, borderless void.
Right, the ecosystem is always localized. If you are migrating a South African business, you have to protect local signals.
How so?
Well, Transitioning away from a highly trusted .co.za domain to a global.com requires specific geographic targeting configurations in Search Console. Otherwise, Google just assumes you've abandoned your local market.
Wow. It really is an incredibly delicate ecosystem. So what does this all mean for you? We've covered a tremendous amount of digital plumbing today. We've seen that moving a domain is emphatically not a set-and-forget switch.
Definitely not. It's a highly active operation.
It really is a months-long operation. It requires a meticulous, page-by-page mapping strategy, a deeply wary eye for inherited algorithmic penalties, and a unified business strategy that bridges server headers, billing operations, and human trust.
If you take away anything from this deep dive, it should be that in the digital realm, your reputation is incredibly fragile, and data requires active listening. You have to monitor the heartbeat of the news site every single day. The algorithm is always judging the transition.
And that brings us to a final lingering thought, something for you to mull over long after this finishes. The guide states very clearly that a fresh domain with absolutely zero history can actually outperform an established domain burdened with a toxic algorithmic penalty.
Which is a huge realization.
It forces you to ask a terrifying but potentially liberating question about your own digital presence or really any major project you're working on. If your historical baggage, those algorithmic suppressions, that legacy code, those toxic associations is weighing you down, could burning the boats, making a clean break with zero server redirects, actually be your fastest path to growth. Sometimes the most profitable thing you can do is just leave the old bakery behind, lock the doors, and build something undeniably better from scratch.